All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining our conference call today for Channel Zero Butcher's Block. And thank you, Nick, for being on the line with us today. We're going to start with the Q&A portion. So if we want to start with a question from CineDump from Jessie, go ahead.
Excellent. Hey, Nick, big fan of the show. Just want to start off by asking, with Channel Zero, it's had a pretty solid track record so far. For you and your crew, is there any pressure to continue to deliver or even top the previous seasons or chapters?
Honestly, only the pressure that we put on ourselves as both writers and horror fans. The pressure really is to do something different every season. I mean, I think each season, while there are thematic connections and some kind of aesthetic continuities, I feel like we've done what we set out to do in terms of doing a different flavor of horror every season and a kind of different vibe. And so now, as we are prepping the fourth season, we want to make sure that that we continue to do that. That we provide viewers with a new experience every time. And part of that comes with having a new director every season, somebody who we can showcase, who can bring a fresh point of view.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. And our next question will come from Downright Creepy from Tyree Kimber. Go ahead.
Hey, Tyree.
Yes. Hello again, Nick. One thing that I've found very impressive about this season of Butcher's Block is just the kind of diversity that you have among the protagonists. You have the two main characters who are sisters struggling with mental issues, and then you also have an older woman along with a young black man facing their own trials. Was it sort of a plan to have this season reflect a wider range of the population, or did that just kind of evolve as the cast turned out to meet the needs of the story?
Well, the answer is both, actually. So in creating the world of Butcher's Block, it's a more sprawling story than the previous seasons. The first one takes place in a small town. The second one is it's not even really a suburb because it's kind of a dream world, but it's a very tight focus on a small group of friends. And for Butcher's Block, we wanted more a sense of a community, of a city where you could feel that it was this world of predators and prey. So we wanted to get a sense that we were seeing like different perspectives. In terms of the casting itself, I mean, obviously the roles are cast age appropriately. I wrote the role of Louise for Cretia, who I've been a huge fan of for years since I saw the movie Cretia. In terms of casting, in terms of racial diversity, it really just comes to who the best actors were. I mean, all the roles in every season are written race non-specific, so we see anybody for every role. So it just happens that we cast a diverse selection of actors because those were the best people for the parts.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question will come from Mike from Dread Central. Go ahead.
Hi, Nick. What can we expect from the season finale of Butcher's Block?
Good question. Without giving spoilers, you can expect, in some cases, expect the unexpected. Expect to see certain characters get their comeuppance. Expect the fates of the protagonists to be maybe different than what you would have expected starting out in the first episode, which was always kind of our intention and part of the interesting journey of this season. And expect some experimental cinema.
Okay, great. And the next question will come from Kelly McNeely from Horror Fuel.
Hi, how are you, Nick?
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
All right. I was wondering if you could give our readers kind of an explanation of why Zoe ate her sister's centipede.
So, I don't want to explain too didactically, but Zoe is a character who is struggling with who she is versus who she wants to be, and she's been given an opportunity to become someone else, which I think is attractive to all of us in some ways. But once she takes that leap, she realizes, shit, like maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe it was better, although scarier, to deal with the challenges that I've been facing throughout my life. And so that scene is a representation of Zoe realizing, I'm going to go back and face the things that I've been afraid of.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And the next question will come from Diana Marsh from Metal Life magazine.
Hey.
All right, Nick. I actually had a question about the music used for all three of the seasons. So, for all three, how much of the music would you consider to be original compositions or original scores? And then, what is the music source or your resources that you tap into to kind of find the songs that fill the rest of the episodes out?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's something that we put a ton of thought into. The majority of the music throughout the three seasons is original music composed by Jeff Russo. Jeff Russo is an amazing composer. I don't know how he does all the stuff that he does. He composes for Fargo, he does Legion, he does Counterpart, he does Star Trek Discovery. Right. He does like 70 other shows that, I can't remember them all. And he gives a ton of attention to them. They all have a different flavor. He can do like anything. He's amazing. And he's done different type scores for us every season. They're a very sort of different flavor. And at the beginning of every season, we have a conversation with him about like what the flavor is this season, how it's going to be different from the previous season, what we want to preserve, and he comes back to us with some really cool, interesting stuff. So this season, we talked to him about like Giallo, some 70s horror film scores that we loved. I used for temp for the season, for temp music, as we were editing, I used a bunch of stuff from like Fulci movies, Argento movies, a whole bunch of stuff from like the 70s and 80s. And so that was the direction that Jeff started with, and he came back with, what I think is a really intense kind of cool vibe for the season. And then, we go through a pretty detailed process with him. He sits with us, we go through every episode, we talk about exactly what we want here and there. And then also this season, unlike the other seasons, we actually used a number of scores from classic horror movies. For example, a lot of people have noted that we used the Cannibal Holocaust score a number of times, the Riz Ortolani score, which is one of my favorite horror scores. It's a totally beautiful piece of music for a really kind of grisly movie. So I've always wanted to use that. I thought it was perfect for this. We also, throughout the seasons, we have kind of carefully selected a couple of needle drops or pop songs that felt really cool. Arkasha Stevenson really wanted to use this Lee Hazelwood song in the first episode of Butcher's Block, which I love. And in the last couple episodes, there's some Philip Glass that we used. In episode 4, there's actually a piece that my father wrote, who's an experimental composer. So we just kind of we sort of carefully curate, and to me, it's a huge part of what the series is, especially because when you're making something with a very low budget, sound and music is a huge part of the atmosphere.
Right. Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next question will be from Doug Dobbins from Takes on Tech.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for talking to us today.
Cool. Yeah,
Nick? Thank you. Okay. One of the things a lot of our readers have asked is, with this indie vibe you have and how you've done the music, which is kind of what I was first going to ask, have you ever thought about translating this into, or working with indie video game makers to do stuff on your series, or things that maybe you might have not picked up because they're too short or they just don't translate well with TV, but you've worked with the original authors?
That would be awesome. I've thought about doing a lot of things like that. I mean, it's sort of, what it comes down to is the appetite of the studio to kind of give us money to do something like that. I mean, I would love to do short adaptations of smaller creepypastas that maybe don't lend themselves to 6 episodes, but have a great kind of core idea. I love the idea of doing an interactive version of one of them. I mean, that's something that's been brought up from time to time, but has never really been explored, just because there's no money to do it. But if there were, I mean, that would be creatively, I think, really cool and rewarding. And of course, gaming and creepypasta kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, Five Nights at Freddy's, and there's a lot of, I've even encountered like fan-made video game adaptations of, End House and some of the other creepypastas. So I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I get asked about it all the time when your show comes up. The series is people this and webisodes are 90% of the people, if they talk about the show with me, that comes into the topic if the conversation's more than 2 minutes.
I would love to do that.
We'd love to see it. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, man.
Our next question comes from Tony Tolato from Sci-Fi Talk.
Hey,
Hi, Nick. Great to talk to you again. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm enjoying this again, and I love the surreal quality to it. It just seems that the core of the story is between the two sisters. Was that element as strong in the original creepypasta, or was that something that was changed for the series?
No, it wasn't really in the original creepypasta at all. In this case, we strayed further from the original creepypasta than in the previous seasons, only because once we got into the writer's room with that creepypasta and started talking about all the different kind of visuals and ideas in Carrie Hammond's story, it opened up so many doors and raised so many questions that we found ourselves kind of inventing more stuff. And that's one reason we changed the title from Search and Rescue or Staircases to Butcher's Block, because we felt we had sort of expanded the world so much. We didn't want people to see this as like, this is the definitive adaptation of Carrie's story, which I hope someone will do eventually. But the sister story really comes from writers' room discussions. It comes from my desire to explore a human dynamic to a horror story. I think that's one of the things that's continuous from every Channel Zero season to the next. It's a very personal horror story, and it also the exploration of losing your mind in the season comes from a vibe in the story of this pattern of strange, bizarre images, which is like, is that real? Did I really see that? It almost reads like a dream or a dreamscape. So yeah, that aspect and many other aspects of Butcher's Block are elaborations of the original story.
Very cool. Enjoying it so far. One of my favorites.
Thanks, man. Cool.
Thank you all, and we're now going to go back around for follow-up questions. So if you do have a follow-up question, when I say your outlet name, please go ahead with your question. And we're going to start again with Jessie from CineDump.
You talked a little bit about the casting and the casting process. Can you talk a little bit more about how this particular cast, like what it was like working with them, and like how it affected you ultimately? What do you think of the outcome?
It was a great pleasure, first of all. I would love to work with any and all of these actors again, and without spoiling anything, there are already plans to. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been dying to work with Krisha Fairchild for a couple of years, so I wrote the part for her. Rutger Hauer, a legend, of course. Somebody who I had never thought, like, oh, yeah, I might work with him. But when we were writing the role of Joseph Peach, we felt like, the dream version was to cast a legendary actor for it, somebody who just brought gravitas, because he's like, Hannibal Lecter in that he doesn't appear on screen that much, but he has to leave a huge impression and have a tremendous amount of presence. Harley Payton suggested Rutger Hauer, and we were all like, that would be amazing. I'm sure he's never going to do it.
Yeah.
But we sent him the scripts, and he just responded immediately and got on the phone with me and Arkasha Stevenson, the director, and was just an awesome guy, and full of ideas. He's incredibly invested. He gets involved with kind of every aspect of his character, and you talk with him sort of for hours about, like, what does the scene mean? What can we do here? How can we make this vivid and strange and unique? And I would say a lot of his dialogue is stuff that he tweaked or came up with himself. I mean, when you're working with somebody who's that invested and that smart, you want to kind of take advantage of it. And then Luke, Brandon Scott, he came in and auditioned. I mean, he's just awesome. The casting director had told me about him beforehand. He's like, he's this great actor. He's been in a ton of stuff. And he just came in and was like, oh, that's Luke. And the sisters, I had seen Olivia in It Follows and in small roles and a couple other things, and I just thought that, like, she had a great kind of presence. Holland Roden, I'd written for on Teen Wolf. She came in and auditioned. She was amazing. And the two of them kind of look and feel like sisters. And yeah, so it was a cool, family vibe up in Winnipeg where we shot this for 3 months. They all stay in touch, and yeah, I mean, every season it's been a great experience.
Excellent, man. Thank you. I love the series. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And next will be a follow-up question from Tyree from Downright Creepy.
Yes. In the previous season, No End House, you had that callback to season 1 with Eddie's hallway being a room in the No End House. Can we expect any kind of similar callback to previous seasons in the upcoming final episode, or have there been any this season that we might have missed? And if not, are there any, kind of ideas to do so in upcoming seasons?
I'm not going to give it away, but there are some small connections. In fact, actually, there are some very small things that appear in No End House that call forward to Butcher's Block. But yeah, there's some little things, and there are some things that will appear in the 4th season that are connected to previous seasons. So, is there the subtext of your question, I guess, might be, is there a Channel Zero universe? And at least in my mind, there is.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next follow-up question will be from Mike from Dread Central.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Nick. What are some of the top creepypasta stories you would like to adapt for season 5 and onward?
Well, if we were to get a season 5, which I would love, probably my top choices. I mean, there's the Russian sleep experiment, which we haven't been able to get the rights to, so I'm going to leave that one off. But otherwise, that would be up there. But I would say This Man, which I guess is not technically a creepypasta, but is like a kind of creepy viral meme that is often considered along with creepypastas. So This Man and the Left-Right Game are the ones that are particularly interesting to me. And there are some others too, and it also depends on rights issues. But yeah, those would probably be my top 2.
Nice. Good choices.
Thank you.
Great. And our next question will come from Kelly McNeely from Horror Fuel.
Hi again. All of the seasons up to date seem to have a common issue with family drama or a struggling family. Was that on purpose, or did it just kind of happen?
You know, it wasn't on purpose in the sense that before we started making the show, I was like, every season is going to feature a conflict between brothers or sisters or parents and children. So in that sense, it just sort of happened. But at the outset, I did plan to have every season be, what I was describing as personal or psychological horror, where the monsters or the terror or the supernatural element is always rooted in something human, relatable, and personal, because that to me is where great horror comes from. When you think about the greatest horror movies, they're all family stories. The Exorcist is about a woman whose daughter is changing, and she's worried about her. She doesn't know her anymore. The Rosemary's Baby is like, you're pregnant, you should be able to trust your husband, but he sells you out for his work. The Shining is about an alcoholic, abusive father. Like, you could go on and on. Most great horror is rooted in terrifying family stories to me.
Right, and you're right, they are. I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, thank you. Great question.
Great, and our next question will be from Diana from Metal Life Magazine.
All right, so I just had a quick question about your staff of writers. Have you used the same writers throughout all 3 seasons? And if so, are you utilizing them for season 4?
Yes, well, we've already written season 4. So, yes, they change a little bit just because sometimes between seasons people get other jobs. They don't know if the show is coming back. But overall, yeah, it's pretty much the same writer's room. Harley Payton has been on every season. Angel Varick-Igler, Mallory Westfall, they started as assistants at the beginning of the season. Now they're on the staff. And Don Mancini, who was on the staff the first 2 seasons and then left because he had to go shoot Cult of Chucky, but will come back if we do more seasons. Yeah, it's all kind of a family. So I try to kind of keep the group small and tight and, a brain trust.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, and our next question comes from Doug from Takes on Tech.
Hey, Nick, switching gears here a little bit here, since someone just came to borrow some gear. With NAB coming up and stuff that way, one of the questions I just got from a fan was, how do you select equipment to film this with the tight budget? How does equipment dictate your artistic vision? Does it limit it? Do you work around it? How do you do that? From choices of camera, sound gear, on how does it affect location picking and pitching for yourself, since you have to keep in this very rigid budget?
Well, our budget generally limits us in terms of like special effects and locations and that kind of stuff. It doesn't really limit us in terms of equipment, except, like we can't have a techno crane every day. But we can, we shoot on the Arri Alexa every time, and usually the specific equipment for a season is within reasonable budget constraints, up to our DP, who for the last couple of seasons has been Isaac Bauman, and our director. And we all talk about what the look of the season is beforehand. We decide on lenses based on that. Isaac and the director kind of pick exactly what they want. And each season we've been able to become a little more, how should I say, cinematic, and have a little bit more freedom. For example, in the first couple seasons, because of, I guess, international technical specifications, we couldn't shoot widescreen. And for the upcoming season, we're going to shoot in a more cinematic aspect ratio. So, yeah, I mean, they're really generally aesthetic considerations rather than budget considerations, but it's a conversation that happens at the beginning of every season.
So it's quite a little mini follow-up to that. I noticed some of your tight shots, were you using the Alexa Mini more than the full-size Alexa to get those in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Accurate.
Yeah. Your cinematic view is shown, and some of these tighter shots this season, and made me just kind of wonder what you were using as well when it just got brought up to me.
Yeah, I believe we're just using an Alexa Mini. I mean, we usually have 2 cameras going, and then we have another camera shooting B-roll or second unit or something like that. And it's all Alexa.
Great. Your look is just wonderful, and your color palette, which you do at the end of the mixing and getting the final edit, is just, it fits the theme. You've really hit the mark for me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, this season, color and palette is a conversation that we have before we start shooting, and then it's something that Isaac and Arkasha were really rigorous about maintaining, because actually both in last season and Butcher's Block, we have this story where we're in different worlds, right? So every world has to have a look, and every different part of the world has to have a look. So a lot of planning goes into it, and we have all these different LUTs that Isaac prepares, so we know exactly how to make each world look the way we want it to, and then we're I think more attentive than maybe the usual TV show to DI, the DI and the color grade, and I would give credit to that to Isaac and Arkasha.
They've done a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, and our final question will come from Tony from Sci-Fi Talk.
Hey, hello again, Nick. Actually, speaking on that, I just really love the way that Arkasha is directing and Isaac has lit, especially the mansion.
Yeah.
And also the tone, going from kind of like, the surreal horror to almost a satiric 1950s food chain thing. It's really kind of quite a gamut there, if you can speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, continuing off of the last question, it's the result of a lot of planning, and it's the result of a lot of imagination on everybody's part. Where there is a traditional way to shoot TV to stay within your budget and stay on schedule, and if you want to not do that, you have to plan very, very rigorously. Otherwise you're just doing shot, reverse shot, and hosing everything down with coverage. But a director like Akasha will look at a scene and go like, okay, here's a beautiful, interesting, unique way to shoot this scene that's just either just a little bit different or like really distinctive. And then that means that you have to really think about every scene before you go into it, which is tough on a 45-day schedule with very little time to shoot. So a ton of the work comes in prep, where we're scouting. Arkasha and Tim Smith, our co-EP, and Isaac would go out location scouting all weekend to plan for the week, and rigorously shot listing and really creating a world on what time we have.
Very cool. No, I love the surreal quality of this one. It really kind of makes it stand on its own a little bit. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this season is certainly our most heightened season, and taking the inspiration from Nicholas Roeg and Argento and Bernard Rose, it's a blending of initially a kind of feeling of social realism that's then infused with a very intense surrealism.
Yeah, totally. Thanks again. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy.
No, thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much, and that will wrap our call for today. Thanks again for joining, and of course, be sure to tune in for the finale of Channel Zero Butcher's Block on Wednesday, March 14th at 10/9 Central on Sci-Fi. Thank you all.